Hey YouTube, I had a request to do a video on how to set up a planted tank. So this is my response to that comment. There's really three factors to consider when setting up a planted tank. Lighting, CO2, and substrate. And really in that order. First off, your lighting. Your lighting is really going to determine what type of planted tank you have. And that you can only grow certain plants under certain lighting conditions. I'll do a brief review of what plants I have in my tank in regards to that. A lot of people with extremely low light tanks will grow Nubius. Another plant that does extremely well is Java Fern at low light. It doesn't need hardly any light to grow well. Another medium light plant is Liguidia. Another medium to low light plant, and this is a medium to low, is the Bronze Wentia I have. The Myrophilium, I'm not sure. I'd guess more of a medium to high light plant. And then the dwarf baby tears are most definitely considered a highlight plant. And as such, if you want to grow something like dwarf baby tears, you have to adjust your lighting up to a high level of light so that they can grow. Otherwise, they will slowly die back or just not grow at all in your tank. And you can definitely grow low light plants under a high lighting. They do extremely well under high lighting. This Nubius has grown 3 leaves in the past 2 to 2.5 weeks. As well, I really should say 2.5. There's a bud right there that should fold out here tomorrow or the next day. So you can definitely do that. But when considering a highlighted aquarium, medium to high light, or very high light aquarium, you need to consider CO2. Without CO2 in a highlight aquarium, you're going to have a substantial amount of algae over time. I actually had the CO2 die down in this aquarium about a week ago when I was gone for a couple days. Came back and there was a decent amount of algae in it over a period of 3 to 4 days, where the CO2 had died down significantly just due to the lack of that in the tank. But CO2 really helps to, well, CO2 helps to reduce the amount of algae in your tank because it allows your plants to grow faster. Really what you're looking to do in your tank is you're looking to use up all the light in the tank and all the nutrients in the tank with your plants so there's nothing left for algae. All algae needs is lighting and nutrients. If you have very high lighting, you're going to have algae if you don't have CO2. Because if you're doing any sort of planted tank, you're going to have a substrate that includes nutrients. So your water column is going to include nutrients. So as such, you need to have CO2 at higher levels of lighting. Otherwise, over time, you're going to develop an algae problem. So what really constitutes medium, high, and low levels of lighting, you might ask? There's lots of different things out there people discuss. Watts per gallon is by far the most commonly discussed, but really isn't a good indication of what type of lighting you have. If you have a 10,000K bulb or 6,500K bulb, you have completely different types of lighting. If you aren't aware of what that means, that's the color temperature of your bulb. A 10,000K bulb is going to be a much whiter bulb. It's those soft white bulbs you see at the store, as opposed to a 6,500K bulb is going to be your daylight bulbs. Oh wait, I correct myself. The 2,700Ks are the soft light bulbs you see at the stores, and the 10,000K are actually what you see in a lot of reef aquariums because they have more light penetration. But for a freshwater planted tank, you want to have 6,500K bulbs because that is daylight. Plants adapted to grow in daylight. As such, you should provide them with daylight to grow. That's how they were designed to grow and how they will do best. And also algae would do best in those conditions as well, but if you want your plants to truly do well, you're going to need to provide them with those bulbs. I had 100K bulbs on this aquarium. Actually, I had 10 watts per gallon. As I said, it's a way of indexing it, but it's not a proper way. To give you a better idea, I had an equivalent of 300 incandescent watts, actually, on this tiny little tank. And now I have, I believe, 120, and that's less than half, but my plants almost overnight when I replaced those bulbs grew and grew and grew. It was a substantial difference. So temperature of bulbs, even a tiny bit, is a huge difference. So use 6500K bulbs. And really what that relates to is PAR. PAR is the new indicator that everyone is discussing on the forums on how lighting should be indexed for aquariums. Because what PAR is it's the level of photosynthetic radiation which the level of light radiation which the plants can photosynthesize. Plants can only photosynthesize certain wavelengths of light, and obviously not green. They reflect green, so they aren't absorbing green. They do best with blue and red. So you want to have bulbs with lots of blue and red. You can use plant grow bulbs, which I actually have one of those on one of my tanks. I haven't really made a decision on it yet. I don't really like the pink coloration of it, but it is designed to be used with plants because it provides a higher level of PAR. PAR is how you should index your light, how much light you have in your tank, and I'll actually provide this post that I'm going to show you here in the comments below. This shows a number of different aquarium lights indexed by PAR and does a whole discussion on PAR, what it is, and why you should be concerned about it. The guy who did it was a lighting engineer at NASA, so he knows what he's talking about. And what he considers to be high, medium, low levels of light is 15 to 30 PAR is low. 35 to 50, I believe. That's not right. I'll post it down in the description what it is. But it's a great way of indexing your level of light. It's a full long discussion on what type of lights you should be looking at and what to really consider when buying a lighting fixture. And after you really determine where your light falls and how much PAR it outputs, you then need to be concerned once you fall into that high level or very high level or very high lighting category. You need to be concerned with CO2. CO2 is a way of turbocharging your plants, allowing them to grow faster so they can outgrow the algae. So I have other videos. I'll post links in the description on how to set up a do-it-yourself CO2 system. I would use it over chemicals any day. I did chemicals for a short period of time. My opinion, and many others I know, is that it doesn't work as well. And if you use too much of the chemicals, you can cause all sorts of algae problems, or in some cases actually eliminate algae, or hurt your fish. So it's something to be very careful with. That's a way of supplementing the growth of your plants. But a CO2 system like this is much more stable and a much better way of running CO2 long term in your aquarium. But after you've determined your level of lighting, added CO2 or not added CO2 based on your level of lighting for the plants you'll have, your next real concern is a substrate. There are many different ways that people do planted aquariums in terms of substrate. I'd say two of the most common are actually the two I happen to have. Fluorite is very, very common. That's actually a fluorite tank that you're looking at right now. It works very well. One thing I like about it is it's very clean. It's actually not very clean when you get it from the bag. You have to clean it thoroughly before you put it in your aquarium. It takes forever to clean it. It's really messy then. But once you get it in your tank, it's a very clean substrate that works extremely well with plants. It provides a lot of iron, which is something you want to supplement to your plants. If you do not have clay or fluorite or something of that nature in your substrate, you'll want to provide supplementary iron. Otherwise, you can't get these red tips to your Liquidia, and in my case, a bronze Wentii wouldn't be the right color. But if you look down there, my Liquidia has some pretty good coloration down there. Those are the tips that I cut off recently and propagated down there. And many of them are just very, very red. And yeah, the pygmy cories are saying hi. I want to check out the video. But then another option is to use dirt, which is something I am leaning towards over time. I recently set up, actually, I guess 3 aquariums now with dirt. The reason being is I could set up probably 5 or 6 29-gallon tanks for, I don't know, $10, $15 more than it would cost me to do even one with fluorite. The cost is just extreme for fluorite in comparison to this. And I put actually a little bit of fluoride down in this, otherwise I would have used clay. If you use potting clay, you'll provide actually much better iron sourcing with fluoride, because the plants can actually grow the roots into the clay. They do much better that way. I apologize for how this tank looks right now. I just put a couple stirbays in there, actually 5 of them in there yesterday, and they stirred up the substrate, which is what I wanted them to do, but they made a complete mess of the place. So I put an extra filter on there so they could clean it out. But yeah, that's another thing that you can do is dirt. It's something that I would definitely consider in your thought process on determining what substrate you want to use. If you're thinking about dirt, I could do a video, but it'd be a crime. Look up Dustin's Fish Tanks on YouTube. That man is the god of dirted tanks. He has video after video after video of how to set up a dirted tank. If he doesn't give you enough information, then I could do a video for you. But he's the one who got me started on dirted tanks, and he does a fantastic job of explaining it. So, but all Substrate really does is provides long-term nutrients for your plants to grow. You want to have a good substrate, because in your substrate, your plants will absorb 40 times as much nutrients as they will through their leaves in the water column. So it's highly important that you have a good substrate. There are a few plants that do well without actually having all the nutrients absorbed through their roots. One example of that, actually I'm going to show you right over here on another tank I have. This is a collection tank I have. I did a couple recent collections from a pond around here, and they're actually doing okay, but that's not the point. I've been floating some water sprite in here for weeks. I just keep plucking it out of my other aquariums. And water sprite will grow through the floating on the top of your aquarium. It absorbs nutrients both through its leaves and through its roots. If you don't have water sprite for a dirty tank when you start it up, I'd suggest getting some. Water sprite grows like crazy. I have just an absolutely enormous amount in here now. I don't know what to do with half of it. I keep throwing it in here because I don't have another spot for it, because I have a couple of huge pieces in the 29 up there, and then I just dirted this aquarium down here. I'm doing the sand on top, and this thing is over doubled in size in just a couple of days. It uses up the nutrients real quickly, so you won't get as much algae. It'll just beat the algae to the punch. So if you don't have a water sprite plant, get something maybe like Rika. I have some Rika up there on top, just a little bit right now. I keep throwing it in my beta tank because he loves it to death. He loves to hide in it. Also, Dustin, I've never really used it, but Dustin lives and dies by duckweed. I haven't experimented with it, so I can't say a lot to it, but having a decent amount of floating plants when you start off a planted tank is a good idea if you have highlighting. I used it in the 29 over there. It's been running for about 6 weeks now, 6 weeks to 2 months, probably actually closer to 2 months. I haven't had a speck of algae in it. I think it's because I started with a ton of floating plants in it. So that's something else you want to consider. But all these issues could be expanded on further and further and further, and I don't want to make an extremely long video. So if you have any questions on any particular topic, I can post another video specifically on that topic, dealing with either lighting, substrate, CO2, or any other questions you might have. Or any questions, any plants I might have in here. So, thanks YouTube. Have a good one. Bye.